we're back with another episode of the Sect Metal Podcast. It's been a while, but we have two esteemed guests with us today. The one and only, the lovely DMB, Death Metal Bob. What do you have to say for yourself?
What's up, everybody?
And, of course, newcomer to the show, known as Josh Pitt, a guy so important that he has his very own Facebook page just about his celebrity status, basically, right? What do you have to say, Josh Pitt?
Well, with 50 likes, it works out, and you should all show up to those Connecticut scene shows, and I'm glad to be on this today.
And growing all the time. So, before we get into this, a couple things I want to mention is, since the Sect Metal Podcast started, both of you have kind of skyrocketed into local celebrity as far as the metal scene goes. You're at all the shows. Everybody knows who you are. What is it like being somebody when you walk in? It's like Cheers, like everybody. Josh is too young to know what I'm talking about with Cheers, but
Cheers was a TV show way before you were born.
Right, where everybody knows your name, and you walk in, and everybody, everybody's glad you came. So when you guys walk into a scene show, and immediately there's recognition from people in the crowd. How is that for you? Is that weird? Is it cool? What do you think?
Go ahead, Josh.
It's a lot of adrenaline, I think. Everybody's there, and everybody's going to have a good time. I enjoy it as much as the next person, especially when we get to see this guy and everybody else there. Plus, it gives the band a good vibe when I can show up and everybody's pumped for me to be there, and then I'm pumped to get the band going. So, yeah, it's been a good experience.
Which reminds me, I made a joke one time on stage when Holding On to Nothing was playing because somebody in the front row was bobbing their head. And I said, that's the biggest mosh pit we ever had. And you were standing behind them, and I think you thought that I said, I want to see the biggest mosh pit we've ever had. So you started mauling people. And the joke was, people don't move for us. Nobody dances or nothing for us. And then you just start wrecking people, and that was pretty good. DMB, what about you with your celebrity status?
I gotta say, at the risk of sounding a little bit egotistical, I'm slightly used to it. I've always surrounded myself with awesome friends, so my friendship circle, although it does change from time to time, everybody seems to generally appreciate my friendship, and likewise I appreciate theirs. So it's always kind of, whether it's joking or not, it's a little bit of a celebration when I'm around my friends. You yourself dragged me into this particular scene. I've been in the metal scene all my life, but as far as this particular scene, you dragged me back in, and I've made friends, and I mean great friends, like our very own Josh here, the Josh Pit. I've made very, very good friends in these past, year now, and I gotta say, it's amazing when I come to shows and everybody screams in my face. It's awesome.
When you say scream in your face, that's part of what you've gotten famous for, are your extended screams pretty much for every band. And I remember you went with me. We played up in, was it Bridgewater, Mass, or something like that, at the Cannery.
The Cannery.
And Psych Asylum was headlining. And
not to interrupt, I was listening to Psych Asylum all the way here. Just wanted to get that out. Love you guys. Dan is the man. Randy's the man. The whole band, great guys.
And of course, you got up front for them, and they had a really good crowd. They packed the place out. And you were up front doing your DMB thing, screaming for them and stuff. And Dan was on the mic, and he said something like, "Hey, Holding On to Nothing, we're stealing your merch, guy." That's how popular you've become in the scene. So, anyway, yeah, we're here, and we have a theme today for this episode that we're going to try. We had a discussion in the Eastern Connecticut metal group where Josh had invited me to who? What band was it?
It was Trivium. The band Trivium.
Right, Trivium. Okay, and if you don't know anything about me, I am very prejudiced about
major genre snob.
Huge snob.
Let me preface, not to cut you off, let me just preface this with this ended up being one of the most hilarious Facebook posts in a while. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm old and stuff, and this episode is kind of billed, young versus old, but I don't even think it's that, because even when I was young, I was like that. And hipsters can be very snobby. Hipsters are focused on what's not even happening now, but what's going to happen tomorrow, and they're always trying to be this is my band, and 3 people like them, and they're obscure. With me, though, I don't think that what I have is hipsterism. I don't know what it is. I am just very, very opinionated, and I immediately know if I like something or I don't like something, and I immediately cross it off, and I'm very closed-minded. I will say that from conversations with you guys that you seem to be the opposite. Like if you just hear something and it grabs you, you don't care what genre it is, what band it is, what type of music it is, it's fine with you.
It depends on the actions of bands too. With lately, every band wants to get big, but certain bands they look good, and certain bands the sound. It could be the vocals, it could be the guitar, it could be all the pieces. Everybody's got their own opinion, and I know bands that you guys grew up with that were big, and now that I've gotten attached to in maybe the last 6 or 7 years, about 7, we'll say high school year. They're pretty good. But there's definitely bands that were making parties and stuff and doing all that crazy stuff back when I was born, like hometown heroes, like Hatebreed.
I think with me, it's always, as far as like, my patented, it's not, it's an act, but I'm not acting. And I say this to every band who thanks me afterwards.
Yeah, it's not.
It's like, listen, this is great music you're playing, and if you're a music fan, and I know Josh can attest to this, and that's probably why me and Josh are pretty close on this whole thing, whether we are into the same genres or not. When I'm feeling that music and they're done and everybody's quiet, I take that opportunity to appreciate them.
Yeah, you are genuinely enthusiastic. There is no artifice to that. When you're there, it's obvious that you're way into it. And it doesn't, for you, I've seen you go off for death metal bands all the way to Casting Shadows and just everything in between. You're just kind of.
I'll tell you this, man. I love forget the fact that I genuinely am great friends with every single buddy in that band. I like that band. Let me just hit on this real quick. That's kind of like what I was saying. You got me into this scene because you and I are great, great, great friends. Now I consider everybody in your band to be not just a friend, a great friend of mine. I consider the same thing with Casting Shadows. And people would say, you're Death Metal Bob. You don't even listen to that kind of music. No, I don't. But I'll tell you what, I love them, and I do now, and I listen. It's kind of like Crossing Rubicon. I absolutely love his lyrical style. I love his lyrics. I love the music. I love everything about him.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing is, we really do have, we don't just have shows on a couple of weekends a year. We have a scene going on where people come in and band members or not, like everyone's starting to know each other and show up, like regardless of who's playing, and that's where it's at. So why don't we get into this? So the concept for today was that Josh came up with 3 bands and 3 songs that he wanted me to hear, and I came up with 3 bands and songs that I want him to hear. And DMB can moderate; he can be in the middle of this thing. And just so everyone has a little history on this, when Josh invited me to like Trivium, it was really random. It came out of nowhere, and I classically hate bands like Trivium. Like, to me, I look at Trivium as being like a pop metal, commercial metalcore group that's like super squeaky clean as far as production, and fairly formulaic as far as like really heavy verses, really heavy breakdowns, really pretty choruses and stuff. And I just universally hate all those types of bands, even though I look at Trivium as being like a young band or a new band, but they're kind of not now. Like, they've been around for a long time. Right. But still, I guess grumpily dismissed that entire genre.
Well, you got to figure it like this. For you and me specifically in our age range, we had our influences already that were pretty strong. And I'm not even saying you and I have the same exact influences, but they came from a time that was specific. And now you move fast forward. For Josh, his influences, one of was Trivium, whereas we were already advanced. Now, I know, although I don't listen to Trivium, I don't dislike them. I've heard them. My wife tends to like them a little bit. I do listen to them a little bit. It's not something I'm going to put on or choose to put on, but I've heard them, and I don't necessarily dislike them. However, I agree with everything you're saying.
It should be mentioned, I think, that Death Metal Bob and I are in our early 40s, and Josh is 22?
23, 20 going 23. 23 this year.
Which is the point of this podcast. I think it's so important, like I'm saying. But, I just want to get this on the record. I think Josh is one of the more knowledgeable I hate even saying youngster because he's a grown man.
Yeah,
he's a man, but
just
he's
look at
one of the
those
more
patches.
knowledgeable youngsters,
He's
if
wearing,
I can say that.
He's wearing Whitechapel sweatpants. What shirt is that?
I got aborted.
Aborted. He's got a Slipknot patch on his cut here. Machine Head, Cryptopsy, Starkill, Municipal Waste. So he's all over.
And listen, before we call him a youngster too many times, he was at the last Iron Maiden show, and I wasn't.
Vest going on here. Yeah, neither one of us were. So that's
I've seen
street
multiple
cred.
bands and shows. It's crazy. And to think that we're getting more coming up soon is more fantastic, scene-wise and big-name band-wise.
I do have to say that Josh is more willing to travel, it seems, for shows than I am at this point. Because at this point, what Maiden was like an hour and 10 minutes from here, and I was kind of like,
Yeah, me and Jeff Hunt and Dwayne Eldridge. I'd like to thank Jeff Hunt for introducing me to the local bands that about a year ago now, I can think about it, Holding On to Nothing, Kill the Straggler, and Casting Shadows played a show at Strange Brew.
They all played their first show together, I think is important to note, too. We don't talk about that enough.
Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, up at the Music Lady. But anyway, let's get into this. We're going to start with Josh's track. Do you want to announce these, DMB? Because you're the.
Well, I mean, let's start it off because we got to give the young. We're gonna call you youngster a bunch of times, Josh. I love you like a brother, so just suck it up now.
Can
buddy.
you actually say "love you like a son"? Because that's more accurate. we're literally older than your mother, right? Your mom's 39, right?
Yep.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit more later, but go ahead, DMB.
And as I said, this is just as references in time. Josh is one of the most respected members of the scene, and he knows his stuff. Now, the first pick we're going to go to, as I said, will be Young. We're going to try a little bit out. We'll listen to Fit for a King, Hallow King.
Okay, so I could tell you immediately, just from haircuts, that I don't like this. Look at that kid's haircut. Look at that mall haircut. Anyway, go ahead, defend this.
I already I tend to like that sounding lyric, the almost it's somewhere in between pig and guttural. I tend to like that so far.
If you think about this craziness, you think of a lot of bands and
full screen that, Charlie.
It was
full screen.
These guys were introduced by my buddy Paul Shaw, and guy's cut his hair by now, a couple albums later, but this got him on the map for a Christian metal band with a lot of good breakdowns and stuff. You could see a mosh pit, a wall of death, and it's just...
That's ironic.
Are you saying these guys are a Christian metal band?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, now it's a little bit more accepted. Back in the day, if you told DMB in like 1992 that there was a Christian metal band, forget it. Right?
No, I'm still there.
Yeah, he's still not into that.
All clean vocals.
In the 50s, this would have been the height of satanic music right here, because just the sound of it. So, see, here's another thing. Here's another trope that I don't like about this. Super heavy coming out of the gate. These guys obviously tuned down to like A or something. They got like the Meshuggah off time thing. And then what's the chorus? The chorus is really clean, really nice, multi-layered, melodic. Justin Bieber singing.
This is the epitome of the 90s for me, and it was when I started going back to what I would consider old school and considering myself old school metal when it started off, and it's really hard, and then it goes soft type thing is always going to be an issue for me.
And I would say, I do, it's not lost on me that Josh kind of grew up on this stuff, this stuff. We grew up in the age of like glam, like with, Poison and
pinch riffs
and all
harmonics,
and I do like that stuff. So
this I don't dislike this at all, though. I mean, it's not hard. It's not horrible at all. For me, like Josh had said earlier, I'm big on the sound of the guy's voice first, and then the band, and then what is he saying?
It's probably about Jesus. I will tell you this.
We're
closing in. We got like a minute left. There's gonna be a big breakdown coming. I've never heard this song. I could tell you, big breakdown coming towards the end. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Always.
I like their filming location spot. They're all in black, and it looks hot as all hell out, but it's some sort of desert. It's pretty cool. Now, Josh, what do you think? Tell us a little bit about not necessarily this video. Tell us about this band.
Why don't you go into it a little bit?
I think that the band itself, a bunch of nice guys. I think the actual the music behind it, the breakdowns are great. I think the drummer's great person. But I think the vocals, arranging of it for being clean, are really amazing. And that's what turned me on to a band, to have a hard hitting band.
It's coming. Oh, look, he's got stigmata on his hands. Jesus is coming.
That is the stigmata. It's the pureness of his evil.
If you think about this, they are trying to play with bands like, they've played with many, the Acacia Strain, Whitechapel, Emir. They just played tour with Guar and
It's funny that there was a time where Whitechapel could fit into our genre.
Now, do you think these guys really go to church, Josh?
I think so. They definitely don't seem like the overly straight edge, but I know for a fact that.
Now, how come you is this? Now, explain this to me. And this isn't necessarily just to Josh. It's probably Charlie as well. I mean, explain to me this. Like, okay, when me and you and Charlie are going to be a band, are we saying like, wow, we could sell a lot more albums if we just cleaned up our lyrics and was decided to be Christian, or is it that I'm just such an outrageous God freak that I need to be Christian everything?
Yeah, no, I think it's. I can't speak for those guys, but I think that you immediately tap into a market by labeling yourself as Christian. You also get some people to not like you immediately, but their sound alone is probably enough for a bunch of people just to jump on.
There's definitely some Christian bands out there that I can contest that are good, and then some that I just don't contest to as well. Fit for a King is definitely an up, but there are definitely bands that have played with Fit for a King that are more Christian that are not in my cup of tea. And it's good bunch of guys, but sound, I don't catch it.
But as much as I can complain about this, it does have 1,384,000 views. So that was Fit for a King song, Hollow King.
Once again, not horrible. Like I said, I'm big on the how does the singer sound? I'm big on that.
Solid State Records, Christian label there.
Let's give Charlie a shot now. Let's try some All Out War and Resist.
I've heard these guys before. I've seen them live.
There's no video for this because for whatever reason, All Out War has never had a video. In contrast, your last one had 1.3 million views. This has less than 25,000 views. So a little bit more obscure.
I like the sound of it.
This is an old band now. This album came out 20 years ago this year.
Yeah, before I was when I was 2 or 3.
I was 23 or 4.
You were rocking out to this.
I had already owned a house.
But All Out War is a band from Poughkeepsie, New York, and came up in the hardcore scene, but are definitely metal. Their sound is 100% metal. The only thing I think that really attaches them to hardcore in any way is they have about 8 breakdowns in every song. And part of the reason I chose this is because the Josh Pitt likes moshing.
This is definitely one of those bands I would mosh to, and I've seen them live before.
Oh, you've seen All Out War, yeah?
Yeah. I don't know if Charlie has, but...
Oh, yeah, of course. But
I can imagine Charlie scissor kicking me by now.
People get...
flying feet.
People get...
hurt.
Destroyed in their pits. This is not a fun pit, an All Out War pit.
No, this is basically watch out. They kind of remind me of the band Nails, but less of the breakdowns, which Nails is more aggressively angry. But
yeah, Nails a lot faster, but I can see the comparison there. DMB, their main influences are pretty much all German death metal bands and Slayer, and I know you like some of those German death metal bands from the...
I gotta say, this is gonna shock a lot of people, but I do not listen to a lot of All Out War. This right here, I would have to say I'm hearing a little bit of Obituary and Pantera more than anything.
They definitely have some Obituary in them. But this is, like I said, this is from '97. This is their first actual album, and then they've had a bunch since then. They're one of those bands that's kind of like Bolt Thrower. They don't change their mold at all. Like, they really don't change. Over the years, they've sounded probably gotten a little more Slayery, but...
what are they? D standard? I like the guitar.
Yeah, I don't think they tune very well.
Yeah. I don't like slow build-ups. It's annoying as hell to me. This song, it's very well done though. Quality. I like the music. I'm not amazingly in love with the lyrics, although I don't know what he's saying.
Every song of theirs is about government corruption and war and the death of mankind.
See, that's amazing because that's exactly when I write is what I'm writing about. If anybody knows, anything about Dark Days, you'll know we're not anti-government, but we're like very aware of what goes on in government.
I know all these words. Love this CD.
Now, do you own the CD on CD or cassette?
I probably don't even own this
Great
anymore.
question. From new metal, old question.
I don't know if this ever came out on cassette. The label that put this out was German, and I got it on CD when it came out. And then their second record was on Victory Records.
Not to take away from All Out War right now, but real quick, Josh, what was the one cassette you played the most?
If I ever actually had a cassette, I really didn't have many, but I pre-ordered Iron Reagan's Tyranny of Will on CD and cassette. But my friend
said he really didn't have that many cassettes.
Yeah, I'm surprised you had any cassettes because
the bands that do small amount, maybe, if anything, but most of mine are CD with the new age Spotify, or
DMB and I were going to Bradley's and Caldor's
Yes.
the day to get our tapes before TV.
Iron Maiden, somewhere in time, I bought probably 7 cassettes because I just played them over and over again, and probably Obituary too, back from the dead. I mean, there's quite a few, but definitely Iron Maiden.
For me, it was Def Leppard, Hysteria. Killed that one. Got it in like 80.
You say that, and I knew this already, but every time you say it, it's odd to me, and I don't know why.
Early Def Leppard,
And I don't even dislike Def Leppard at all.
I got into when I was 10.
I think when I was young, it was definitely Metallica, a little bit of Rob Zombie. It was definitely the Black Album, Master of Puppets.
That's another one I got to throw in there. I wore through a few of them cassettes too.
And then it evolved into Machine Head Burn My Eyes at McDonald's. And it kind of just grew to a million bands later. Good, solid choice. I would say, Charlie. I mean,
I think and I think this is probably an
It's not a
older
hate
style
band.
thing. You get the bands you like, and then you're kind of stuck on them. And I think in the past 20 years, what you witnessed personally, there was such an influx of, I put the quotes up when I say this, of metal. There was 3 or 4 different recipes versus in hair metal there was one recipe.
Right, money.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's how you get it: Aquanet and freaking pinch riffs and blah blah blah. But I think, like I said, in the past 20 years, it could be several different things that'll make you some money, or may make you some money. Big different recipes. In any case, might as well give the new another shot. Thy Art is Murder. Reign of Darkness. What do you got to say about this one?
I mean, it's not going to be like the last one. It's going to be really heavy, and a lot of people like them for being maybe less than 5 years now. So let's see if you like it, guys.
I have actually seen these guys.
I've seen them many times.
I'm sure
now.
you have, but I saw them at the Worcester Metal Fest a couple of years ago.
With Behemoth.
Yeah, playing before, like between Inquisition and Behemoth.
Worcester
And,
Metal Fest coming up.
So this is, to me, this is like, what was the first band we listened to?
Fit for a King.
Yeah, so if that was metalcore, this is deathcore, right? And I love death metal, and I could tell that this is heavy. But again, it's so formulaic. Like, all deathcore is kind of the same to me, like the Suicide Silence and the Whitechapel and the Job for a Cowboy. To me, they all kind of sound the same. Do you disagree with that?
I think I do, because lyrically wise, this is definitely more deathcore than some bands would be categorized. I think certain bands that you just mentioned are more metalcore in certain ways, and some of them more deathcore. I think
Suicide Silence, and I hate saying core, I hate it, but I'm going to do it. Suicide Silence would definitely be metalcore and not deathcore. And I happen to love Suicide Silence. Well, I did when the original lead singer was still alive.
I don't know what happened to Job for a Cowboy, but they were definitely on the deathcore side, and then these guys showed up to kind of take over their spot. I think Whitechapel, it's deathcore, but now more metalcore, and I hate to say it, I love those guys.
I like this. I don't mind it at all. It's like I said, it's not in my rotation. It's not something I'm going to listen to, but if I was at a show and they were playing, I'd be rocking my head, sure.
I remember seeing them that I was impressed with the singer's voice, so I went home and looked it up, and it was okay. I mean, like, the recorded version was okay. One thing I gotta say about these guys, though, this song is a couple years old. They just came out with a new record, right?
Yep.
And I heard it, and it is the most blatant Behemoth ripoff. Like, his voice, the music, the chords, the drumming, it's unbelievable. Like how Behemoth it is. Do you agree with that?
I don't think so. I think Behemoth's on a whole different level, and these guys are just kind of behind, but I think they have a totally different sound. I don't see where the Behemoth comes in for the new record.
I don't hear it right here. I don't hear
That's my problem in general with when we put the core genre part of the core on it. It's like in a lot of these bands, I hate saying these bands, not specifically this band. Okay, you're going to do the routine, you're going to do the recipe, like I said. 4 or 5 of you are going to be decent, 1 of you is going to be great. All the rest of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, they may make an album, but they probably won't, and you won't remember them in 5 years. That's the hardest part about this new movement, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's true. And they call it metalcore, deathcore. Really, the only core thing about these bands is that they have breakdowns. And probably initially, like the early metalcore bands were hardcore kids that were playing metal. I doubt that a lot of these younger bands were ever hardcore kids. I think they just got into this and just started doing it. So it's almost kind
Agreed.
It's almost kind of not a good label for it. But anyway, yeah, I would suggest anybody who has the time to do this, check out the new Thy Art Is Murder that came out in mid 2017, and then listen to some like middle era Behemoth, and it's pretty striking, I think. Anyway.
Let me before we get to the
reason
next.
I don't like them, by the way, is because they're from Australia, and my wife thinks every man from Australia is attractive. So I just don't like the entire island. Anyway, go ahead, DMB.
Let me before we get into the next song, I just wanted to touch on this real quick. Bands that and like I said, this is not Charlie and I against you or anything like that, but bands that were quotes up again from Charlie and I's era that have changed their sound, and now they are either metalcore or deathcore. What are our thoughts on those from both of you? I guess just a random question, because it's a very relevant thing going on. I would call it a problem.
Bands that have changed their sound to be more commercial, like metalcore,
and not even on purpose to go to sound like more commercial, but that's exactly what they're doing.
Who do you have in mind?
Oh, geez, many bands: Metallica, Trivium, even Cataclysm.
Yeah.
Now I'm jumping around here, but
I don't know if off the top of my head I can think of anyone that has shifted from something totally different into a pure metalcore sound. The band that kind of sticks out to me that changes with the times and is still respected for some reason I don't understand is Machine Head.
Yeah, great example.
Because Machine Head, I've said this before, nobody agrees with me on this, but they started that first album. What was the first album called? Burn My Eyes, right?
Burn My Eyes.
And everyone loves that album, but it came out during the time that Pantera and Biohazard and Sepultura were big. And if you boil that album down, that's what it is. It's those 3 bands. And then they did another one that was similar to that. And then all of a sudden Korn was big, and then they did a new metal album, which was like terrible, nobody talks about, right? And they all wore like Adidas tracksuits and cut their hair. And then that came out, and then they decided that they were like Metallica or whatever. They did the Blackening. And then, metal started to get heavy again with all this metalcore and deathcore stuff, and then they started to get heavy again. So I don't know. I just think they're a band that's a good band that unfortunately just follows what's big at the time.
I think for certain bands, this is nowhere near like long range. I've seen a band that I just saw Warped Tour this year. Don't judge me for it, but 100th was a really good band back in the early 2000s, and they just wrote a new record, and it just sounds really over melodic. And with that last show, now whenever they do another tour, it's going to be kind of it's going to be more of just melodic guitars, like instead of singer going hardcore, it's more of just him guitaring and very slow. So if you guys,
100, I've heard 100th, and they're like, I don't think you could really call them metalcore. They're actually more of like a hardcore band that plays metal, or like melodic metal, right? They were like a melodic hardcore band.
yeah.
What I heard from them, I actually didn't hate. I could still listen to some of the new brands of hardcore that are coming out, as long as they retain some actual hardcore to them. Whether they're melodic or not, I can still kind of get into it.
All right, gentlemen. It looks like we're back to old. The old farts pick is up. We're going to try out some internal bleeding. Final Justice. Charlie, what do you got for us? Tell us about this.
So I do have to admit that the bands that I picked, at least the first two, I picked them because I know Josh likes to mosh, and I picked two like really mosh heavy bands that I figured he'd be into. But Internal Bleeding is a New York death metal band that's been around for 25 years maybe, and could probably rightly be called a bit of a Suffocation ripoff.
Certainly.
At least initially. But what I like about them, and I actually listen to Eternal Bleeding far more than I listen to Suffocation, is because Suffocation is very technical and they do a lot of mathematic things with their music, and they kind of shift all over the place. Eternal Bleeding to me is like the caveman version of Suffocation, where their big priority is the mosh riff. That's what they're concerned with. Like everything to them is built up to a big mosh, and it's not like a metalcore like stolen Meshuggah riff breakdown. It's it's kind of got that Suffocation death metal approach to it.
And this is fairly new because, as most people might have known, the drummer is no longer with Internal Bleeding because of his passing. Rest in peace.
Right, Bill Tolley, a fireman in New York, died on the job, fell off of a burning roof, and that was only a couple months ago.
But I had the pleasure to see him play multiple times. I think once in Trick Shots with my buddy. He had a band called Force or Morth, which was death metal slam. And then before then I saw them Suffocation, Cataclysm, Jungle Rot, Pyrexia.
That's a good bill. Jungle Rot with
Jungle Rot's been getting a lot of love lately.
Pyrexia, it fits right in these guys.
It was their third or fourth date, and it was either Connecticut, New York, or then it was Ohio. So I went to Connecticut to see them, and I was not disappointed. Every band blew the stage off, especially Internal Bleeding.
I've seen Internal Bleeding over the years with probably 3 or 4 different singers. Like they're always rotating singers, but I gotta say I really like this new guy.
I would have to say, like, even if you like them, then the next time you hear him, it's somebody else. My problem with the new guy, he is reading a damn script. And I'm not even saying that sound mean, it's just my impression is he's reading a script. He's not singing, he's reading a script. I mean, it's just my impression of him. How many singers have they had? 4 or 5, right?
Way more than that. Their original demo had one guy, and then I can't remember the guy's name. There was another guy who did their first 2 albums, who was really good, really low death metal voice. And then they kind of shifted around, and then Keith from Pyrexia was singing for him. And he has a very different voice. He has much more of like I guess like a mid-range or high-level death metal voice. I like that too. I thought that sounded good too, but this guy's really good.
That's the worst part with bands. As the front man of the band, and no offense to guitar players, drummers, anything else, but you replace the singer, you've changed the band, whether you're singing the same lyrics or not. And then there's the two things. You can try to sound exactly like the other guy, and then what the heck's the point? Or you try to sound like yourself, and then you sound totally different. It's such it must be horrible for the guy trying to fill in and the whole thing, the whole situation.
It's definitely, I know there's a bunch of bands out here we could list, without singers now. Linkin Park's without a singer. A couple years ago, Suicide Silence was without a singer. But they have Eddie from All Shall Perish. And my opinion on that is I think Eddie is a good pick. I mean, he was the original guy, but I also think he should go back to All Shall Perish. That band in general was a really good band in my eyes. But everybody's got their own opinions, so.
Right. We talk about this a lot. I mean, you take the great Cannibal Corpse and the great 6 Feet Under now. I I'm a Chris Barnes fan. People could say what they want about him. I don't care. I love him. When I try to sing death metal, I try to kind of sound like him. That's the voice I like. But now take it like this. I've said this before, and a lot of people agree with me. Fisher is better in Cannibal Corpse. It's a better sound. It works better. Corpse Grinder is Cannibal Corpse.
He's more dynamic. He can do more things than Barnes could.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Barnes sounds good in 6 Feet Under. It just kind of worked.
Right. Anyway, moving right along. I liked it. I didn't think it was that bad at all. It's probably something I might even try to listen to again now that I've heard it again and kind of refreshed myself on it.
I got to tell you this, and I don't think you're going to agree with this. There's slam death metal as Josh was talking about. So those guys are definitely, Internal Bleeding is definitely a slam death metal band. And who are the kings of slam death metal? Dying Fetus.
Absolutely.
Right, Dying Fetus. I like Internal Bleeding better than Dying Fetus.
Ooh. You're out of your mind.
I have to disagree with you, Charlie. I like Dying Fetus.
Wait a minute. Now, Dying Fetus has been around 27 years? How long these guys been around?
About the same, yeah.
This is the decider. Whoever's been around lost first is the better one.
They're all spawn of Suffocation.
No. But listen, I've seen Dying Fetus live several times. I love Dying Fetus. They are very, very, very ranged, very dynamic. That duo, it's awesome for me. These guys sound a lot like them, Internal Bleeding.
I would admit that Dying Fetus is more talented than Internal Bleeding is. They're a lot more technical and are completely mosh oriented. Like everything for them is like building up for that big mosh part and stuff. But something about Internal Bleeding to me just hits me harder. I can't explain it.
Definitely need to check out the new Dying Fetus record then, because it is definitely worth it.
Dying Fetus hasn't put out anything that I haven't liked yet. Like I said, I've seen them live. Seen them with 6 Feet Under. That was a great show. I can't say enough about Dying Fetus, but moving right along, this show isn't about Dying Fetus. This is old versus new. Now, hey, let's check out some new. We're gonna listen to a little bit of Parkway Drive. Deliver Me. Josh, what do you think? What do you got?
As Charlie would say now first, another Australian band. I think.
Right.
Good eye, Mike.
I think this record was a really good record, but I think it speaks for itself that it has a good vibe, and just the first part makes me just want to go jump into a mosh pit. Just like the Mahidra show, when Dan Jackson just literally touched my shoulder and literally it was a mosh pit out of nowhere. Just the energy. It's a good workout music I like, and I definitely can say this is a good band. I rarely get to see once in a blue moon. I love to see them again. And give it a listen, guys.
I've probably overstated this today, but I'm big on the vocals. When I say this, I'm saying as far as like, hey, listen to this song you haven't heard before. The vocals are the first thing I hear. I really love this guy's vocal range. I love his deep, the thickness of his voice.
The hardcore part right here. I think this is a metalcore band that I believe started as an actual hardcore band in Australia. See this? If the whole thing was this, like this D beat, this is a hardcore part.
Yep.
But which is great. His voice sounds good. Everything's good. But it's probably gonna have a clean chorus, right? And it's gonna have a Meshuggah off time. So, they're gonna break that like off time breakdown. Everybody does that. I don't know. You ever hear "Devil in Me"?
Like maybe once.
This is a band I should have actually played for you. They're a Portuguese hardcore band, melodic hardcore band they have some metallic parts to them, but they sound like Parkway Drive if they weren't so metal, I guess, and they didn't have like the huge this. You know what I mean? You should check them out. They're actually really good. Devil in Me.
We'll give them a check.
For a newer, younger band, that I surprisingly like them.
I keep forgetting that Charlie's not a big mosh pit guy. I mean, he'd be there, but
Yeah, I'm somewhat in mosh retirement, I would say, but yeah, back in the day, it was.
Yeah, you got to understand, and I'll tell you this, and this is a little off topic here, but Josh and I have spent, I would say, over the past probably, let's say, just round it off, say 6 months, we've probably spent 3 or 4 minimum hours in the mosh pit, and I'm 43 with arthritis, a bad back, bad knees, but when that music's playing, I mean, I think you and I's cardio has probably improved in the past 6 months, because you know as well as I do, and to keep up with you isn't easy. But I mean, it's an hour or two into the show, and you and I are still jumping around like savages. And I got to give some credit to Casting Shadows lead singer Matthew Barnes. He's another one. We'll get out there and we'll jump up and down quite literally the entire damn show.
Yeah, I actually. There's times that I'm moved to mosh at scene shows, but I don't because I don't actually mosh. I hardcore dance like that.
Yes, you do, and I love that.
I do spin kicks and I do that. I do crowd killing. I never try to hurt anybody. I just sort of like run into them.
Credit to Steve Dobbs Warford.
He's another one. Spin kicks and windmills and stuff like that. And it's just I don't think that's what scene needs is people getting hit and getting.
I do enjoy though, Charlie, when I see you in that rare mood. I love to see glimpses of your former glory as a youngster.
It used to be my thing. I would try to run off the stage and run across people's heads as far as I could before I fell in.
Being a light guy, sorry, brother. Being a light guy, crowd surfing for me was almost it was like as easy as you could ever be. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's been. That's what I want to get to is the scene productions. Eventually, to have the, music, metalcore, whatever, the hardcore. When they have hardcore shows, definitely the crowd surfing would be fun. The hardcore, I've seen Charlie do it. Kill the Straggler comes on. Next thing you know, here comes Charlie in a romper, throwing feet high with no shoes on.
And see, this is Charlie experiencing the same thing. Like, when I'm saying, yeah, that's Charlie experiencing the music. And we all know you experience the music. This is and this show is centered on old versus new and, genre specific, but it doesn't matter. When we're at the show, and that's the one thing I like about the local shows, it's a family, as Charlie alluded to earlier. It's one big family. And that's why we can comfortably argue over old versus new and call you a youngster and call us old farts, etc. It's the music is what we're all here for.
I just do want to say that Parkway Drive, Australian, I'm sure my wife likes them because they're probably good-looking Australian boys, and that's what she likes.
Second time.
Yeah.
Moving right along, let's check out another old selection. We're going to check out Section 8, Broken Glass Memories.
So this is another band from upstate New York. So anybody who hears Holding On to Nothing is immediately like, oh, Life of Agony. But listen to this. There's a little bit of that in there too.
Why don't you do this and Hold On to Nothing? Or that's just not...
With the screaming?
Yeah.
I can't sing and scream.
Your metal voice is awesome, but I agree, singing and screaming is not easy.
Does anybody...
It would wear my voice out.
Does anyone remember the couple shows where Charlie pulled out Worcester Pete has a Hatebreed tattoo?
I wish I could get the guys to keep playing that. It's just we always...
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, it's always a treat when we hear it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Section 8, they're from upstate New York and are a band from the 90s. This record came out in 97. And this is a classic, flawless album. And when this was metalcore before there was metalcore. This is a hardcore band playing a metallic style at the time that came up in the hardcore scene. And the album is called 9 Ways to Say I Love You, and it's just awesome. It's like if Life of Agony was evil.
They almost remind me of a very clean version of 1098, which was an old Jewett City local band.
And the word on these guys is that they had they were right on the verge of getting signed to a major metal label. They never said which one, but could have been Roadrunner, could have been any of the big ones. And they blew the audition. They screwed up. I guess the singer he didn't perform, or he showed up late, or something happened, and after that they just sort of fell apart. But
I've got to say, I'd absolutely never heard of these guys.
And that's a crime. This is such an unknown band, but this album is incredible, start to finish. It's like I can't say that about very many things, but this is basically a perfect album to me.
I can dig this. I definitely think it's a little bit slow paced, but it gets catchy. That's what it is.
I don't like the gutturals, the thicker vocals with the slow melodic, rhythmy singing. It just will never work for me.
And being a '90s band from the Northeast, these guys incorporated mosh parts, but not in a predictable kind of hate breed build
I'd
up
agree
here
with that,
comes way. They just mixed them in.
I agree with that. That's it's funny you mention that because the timing is big in your band.
See, this is a part that Josh could smash people to.
You hear that, C Productions? Call up Section 8.
These guys did a reunion a couple years ago up in Poughkeepsie, but I don't think they're really playing on that much, unfortunately.
Well, if we're calling out old bands, Savalis Youth, where you at?
Not really an old band, but popular. Hey, Chad from Hell Yeah, bring back Mudvayne, please. 2001.
This is Charlie here with an official. Just because you mentioned Mudvayne.
We're not on Facebook, so I can't put happy faces and funny gifs. I almost feel like I'm handicapped here.
We don't need to get into it, but if I don't like metalcore, if there's a level below that, it's new metal. To me, there's never. You can usually find some redeeming example of anything, like in metalcore. Like the first Killswitch Engage album, I can't hate on too much. I mean, it's because it kind of set the example for everything.
I can't help but to like Killswitch either.
But
I like
but new metal. There's not a single new metal song that's ever been written. Not a single good one.
No, I agree. That is my genre snob right there. It's not even the genre, it's the era snob more for me.
Yeah, everything is, with new metal was just, to me, was very commercial, designed to be commercial. And I always define new metal as metal made by guys who liked parties more than they liked metal. Like guys who didn't actually listen to metal that decided that they were just going to be in a metal band. That's kind of what they always
No, right. And you could tell those bands pretty close often. It's pretty straightforward. Do you love music? Do you want so bad, just, I wish I was in a band. I wish I could freaking play live. I wish I had a bunch of friends that can. Or do you say to yourself, I wish I was famous?
Right.
And I think there's a lot to be said for both of them, and you can definitely tell that in the product.
Yeah, you can almost always smell that immediately, that whether it's more of a cash grab or something that's actually emanating from a musician's soul, But anyway, that's all our music for today.
Listen, everybody out there, particularly this summer, get on Facebook, check out the local shows, particularly Scene Productions. We got Salted to the Earth. There are so many different labels out there doing great work. There's so many different bands out there showing up. I mean, all over this local area and a little bit outside. We could travel as far as, New York. Specifically myself, hate traveling too far, but these are the bands to go do it. As I state this often, commercial bands are great, but local bands are really where it's at right now.
I can agree with that, and I go to a lot of international anywhere shows. I've been to Carolina Rebellion, I've been to Worcester, Mass for the Metal Fest, and I've been to Boston and New York and crazy stuff like that. But this Scene Production dragged me in, and I thank everybody, Jeff Hunt for bringing me to the first Connecticut show. Everybody else make me feel welcome. We got plenty of shows every time, any place around the Eastern Connecticut. So come out. Heck, even come say hi to Josh Pitt. He won't maj you.
And this is a lot of these shows are all ages, and you I'm not saying you bring your kids there, they're not going to hear a little bit of foul language, but I will tell you this: there's not going to be a bunch of savagery other than the music. It is a safe environment for children. I wouldn't bring children to bars or whatever, but all ages shows, they're set up, they're safe, it's a great time.
And that is one thing you can say about the Josh Pit. It's big. What do you weigh, Josh Pit? You're a big guy.
220.
Yeah, for a guy your size, I've never seen you hurt anyone or maul anyone, or the vibe at the scene shows really is pretty cool. And again, that's why I hope that hardcore dancing never happens at one of those.
Well, it's funny for Josh's age. He's very polite. He'll help you up when he knocks you down. He's not.
He's watching out for the girls.
Right. That, and I hate saying this because it's a slight on you personally, and I don't mean it to sound like that, but that's hard to find in your generation of people. You're very respectful, very manly. I've always been drawn to you as a friend because of those qualities. Now, never mind the fact that you listen to some new music. I mean, hey, we'll let that slide.
And you guys listen to some old music, I'll let it slide.
Hey!
But I listen to some of it.
But we all love us some local music. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, that's right. So speaking of which, you guys being scene celebrities, what do you have coming up in the near future? DMB, you're working on a musical project.
Well, real quickly, and I'm seriously hoping within 2 months tops we're gonna have our first single out. My plan is, and it's a little unorthodox from everybody else's plan. We're currently working on, I would say, 6 songs. We probably have, say, 4 that are polished. I want to get a single out just to get people hyped up on us, and then work on a 4th song, just so we can have a set of stuff to do.
What's the name of the band?
Our band is Dark Days.
And you have some heavy hitters from previous groups in there, right?
Yeah, we just picked up a new guitarist. I'm going to leave his name out right now, but he's super mega talented. Our rhythm guitarist is Ronnie Davis. He was in Eden Will Burn. And
another old guy like us.
Right. And then we got a few young heavy hitters. One of the greatest bass players I've ever seen. Iron Maiden fan, great guy. He's a dad. He's a great guy. Jake Best, one of the greatest bass players I've ever seen. And our drummer, Devin Bradbury, is just amazing. He's from the Josh Pitt era, very young. These guys are great. We're going to put out together some great music. But I want to give, a most huge thanks to Charlie, who, without him, I would just still be sitting out in my house right now doing my old hobbies.
Don't make it weird.
So I really love you. And I don't mean like I love you like a brother. I mean like hot shot. Oh, okay, now it's getting weird.
No, I was kidding. What about you, Josh? What do you got going on?
We got some good shows lined up, guys. Some old, some new. Everybody has a fancy tickle to it. Definitely some scene production shows, and if not scene production, we've got the almighty Exodus Obituary coming to the Worcester Palladium.
Me and Josh, old and new. It's going to be all the same that night.
With new acts like Power Trip and I think it's Angel Dust. Anyway.
Whoa, a couple beers and I'm good.
Anyway,
DMB don't need no hard drugs. He's good.
Go check that out. There's plenty of other shows. We've got Hatebreed coming back with a 20-year and a 15-year double tour.
That's going to be great.
And I got to say that I loved Hatebreed back in the day. I don't really like much of what they've done in the last couple of years, but if they're going to come back and play Perseverance and Satisfaction is the Death of Desire, and they come to Connecticut, I will be there.
Toad's Place, December 8th, Charlie, mark your calendar.
Hatebreed is a band for me. I don't have to love him. I don't even have to agree with his lyrics. I've seen him enough. They've been involved enough, and Corey has done enough. Wait, is it
James
Yasta there? He's done enough for other bands. It's just almost like he gets a pass no matter what genre, what he does. Their music is good enough for me. It doesn't have to be any better, I guess I'm saying.
And last but not least, I've got a couple shows, Fit for a King, which you guys listened to today. They're playing.
Bring your cross. Wear your cross necklace.
Wear your cross. I've got Trivium and Arch Enemy. And then Cannibal Corpse and Power Trip are playing with Gatecreeper in Boston.
I love me some Cannibal, but I don't know.
I like Gatecreeper too, but if they came closer, I think I would go. But I don't know if I'm going all the way to Boston for that. Too old.
What's up with that? You dragged me back into the scene. Now I'm going to Middletown and Bridgeport and the Cannery and all these places. My wife's in the scene, and then now you snob out on us.
I did go see Life of Agony in Boston with Dwayne, but it's Life of Agony.
Oh, with Dwayne, because it's Dwayne.
Well, because it's Dwayne. Yeah, that's more important than actually Life of Agony too. But it takes a lot. Being married, Josh doesn't know about this yet, but being married, sometimes you got to pick your battles as far as what shows you go to, and usually I got to reserve my weekends for scene shows. I wanted to talk about that, though. I alluded that I wanted to get back to this. So, the Josh Pitt, he's a moshing type of guy. Your mother saw Hatebreed back in the day, right?
Correct.
And the rumor is that you were conceived at a Hatebreed show. Is that correct?
It's most likely correct.
That would make a lot of sense. I mean, you literally were a zygote in and around the pit, the Hatebreed pit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you are so drawn to breakdowns.
I like it.
That's street cred. I mean, that's the real thing.
That was the early days, so.
When me and DMB were born, it was like Elton John and stuff like that. But you came around, we were probably conceived during like a Boston More Than a Feeling or something. But you came out there and
Steppenwolf for me.
Conceived through an act of violence and Burial for the Living. That's where you generated from. That's incredible. You can't beat
Another
that.
day, another bandana, and then he left.
That's right. But anyway, so that's our show for today. Now, listeners, if you agree or disagree with anything we've said, just leave a comment below, and we can talk about it and debate it. It'll be more fun that way. And if you do have suggestions for upcoming Sect Metal podcast shows, you can let us know. And by the way, we are planning a live recorded podcast at MetalCon 2017, put on by Scene Productions, and there's over 10 bands playing.
Don't miss this.
Multiple stages, vendors. It's going to be
We're
awesome.
going to be at Pistol Pete's. We're going to be at Strange Brew. This is going to be the show not to miss.
I'm going to be there. Are you guys going to be there?
We're going to be there filming live, buddy. Sect Metal on scene.
Josh is so excited about it. He's going to be at both venues at the same time. That's how.
Now, hey, let me touch on that real quick. Now, you're not you specifically, but there's going to be some choices that have to be made that night.
Yeah. So it's split up. Casting Shadows and Kill the Straggler and a bunch of other bands are playing at Strange Brew. And then I think wisely, Dwayne split it so that the bands that are a little more doom like.
Yeah, he had to do it like that. But it's hard, bro. It's hard.
It is, and yeah, I don't know which one I would go to if I wasn't playing.
I'm flipping a coin because you guys are all my good buddies.
Yeah. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for going over to the Kill the Straggler side.
Listen, if I see you guys play and leave, don't hate me for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just going to happen anyway. But anyway, CT MetalCon will probably get Dwayne in here, Dwayne and Dalton, and we'll talk about that with them also. All right, Sect Metal Podcast out. Woo!